Kyle here from allmediareviews.blogspot.com. Trying to make another video on my computer, which haven't done in a couple of years, and the sound clip. But what I was going to do is what I've sort of update or talk a little bit about, but not make this too long. Interest to write a book that I've wanted to write, or why my blog has sort of been stagnant, well, beyond even stuff like the pandemic, but and finding a million hits. It's like there's all these people that have written books. Well, not all these people, but like people like the Prog Report and Lorenzo from Prog Core, even though his books are in Italian. And locally in Minnesota, we've had people like Andrea Swenson and Chris Raymond Schneider. They're both journalists of sorts. He's a music writer, Chris Raymond Schneider, and Danny something. He's also written a book, another radio person. It just sort of reminded me, this is what I came to conclude like 4 or 5 years ago, that it's like, if these people are writing books, why wouldn't I be able to write a book? Even though a book's a lot of work. And then, of course, what would I have to offer that these other people might not have, or I don't know, or at least my spin on it. So anyway, I concluded, well, my largest taste and maybe knowledge would be in progressive rock of the 21st century, and pick your dozen other ways of referring to it: new prog, indie prog, alt prog, college prog, progressive college rock, alternative prog, it's just post-rock prog, post-prog, prog metal with there's a million ways to describe it. That's the one conclusion. I haven't been able to come up with a good term, but the best sort of summary or vague description is artists bands, especially since the year 2000 of the 21st century, that draw upon, beyond influences of the original progressive rock like Yes, Genesis, Pink Floyd, Rush, even ELP, Jethro Tull, even Zeppelin and Queen. You'd say draw largely on, at least to an extent, second or third degrees of separation, Radiohead and Tool. Some others, I suppose, as well. U2 is another one, I would say, but U2 is much further out in terms of the would call progressive rock in any way. But there's a bevy of them that I'm totally passionate about and knowledgeable about, and Lorenzo, especially from Alt Prog Core, loves a lot of them too. Anyway, you'd call it almost like prog, but not prog, or art rock, 21st century art rock, heavy art rock. Rock music that's not dumbed down, that's got some kind of emphasis on art and musicianship, and just it's more for the sake of art versus the sake of, some of it is pop music too. Anyway, the challenges I've faced doing this, among others, I've been trying to kind of outline. I came up with a conclusion about a month ago. I would like to feature or an essential albums list from the year 2000 to the year 2019. And I thought, well, maybe one way to do it would be look at it in 5-year chunks. So from 2000 to 2004, 2005 to 2009, 2010 to 2014, and 2015 to 2019. Then choosing these essential albums or recommended albums or just favorite albums within that umbrella. The artists, those bands, those albums from those bands or artists, I wouldn't necessarily think would be sort of the retro-sounding progressive rock or even neo-progressive rock necessarily. That's the challenge. Where do certain artists or bands, do they really qualify or fit to be unique enough in this sort of genre that doesn't have a good genre name? Stuff like Pain of Salvation and like metal, especially Protest the Hero and Between the Buried and Me. Do they fit in this? They fit among the appeal of people that like a lot of these other bands, like the Mars Volta and Muse and Coheed and Cambria and Ours and Dredge. But, and where do bands like Spock's Beard and Transatlantic and Porcupine Tree and Steven Wilson, I think, do kind of fall in there, like OSI, but it's that's why it gets to be too genreified and too much of sort of a snobbish, well, this is, but this isn't. And so that's why I've struggled with this, And, how many albums? This list could end up being hundreds of albums, and it's a little overwhelming, especially for the names. A lot of these names are very obscure, so that's why I've been struggling with the format and how I'd want to do this thing. But to simplify it, I could just do 10 albums from every period and just do a total of 40 and just simplify, and then you're going to leave off a lot. Or is it a problem to put artists more than once in there? Because a lot of these artists would have multiple albums that would be among my favorites or recommended, and that's the other issue. So that's kind of what maybe I'm thinking way too much. I'm overanalyzing and thinking way too much about it. And I haven't even written the book. I was just coming up with like albums lists and the calendar stuff that I've been doing, that I've been laboring over just to come up with a list of all the albums that I consider to be noteworthy, if not favorites, from those 20 years. Or the albums list I made actually starts back in '65. And when I started that, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. I don't know how many years ago it was. It was like 5 or 6 years ago. There's definitely stuff I did not include or I missed or I would add now that I didn't know about or think to have then. Because some of those albums lists, those calendars are very sparse, especially the early ones. But that's kind of what's been off and on my brain as far as, what I'm trying to do and why maybe there isn't content in the blog. But among other reasons, just time to make videos. I don't really have the opportunity because we're always doing something, and having my wife here is just it's not as easily done. So I guess I didn't really answer any questions. I just kind of babbled on about my current the current state, or the impasse I'm at right now with just trying to understand what to do with this. But ideally, it would be a book that would cover it. I mean, there's definitely a lot of great records from the year 2000 all the way up to 2019, and including EPs. There's a lot of great EPs too. But a simpler way to do it would be just take progressive rock albums and all the different, whether it be Unexpect, who's a crazy circus prog metal, or I don't know, the Apples in Stereo, who aren't really prog, they're psychedelic. That's the thing, is maybe the simplest way or the easiest way for me is just to choose a list of albums and not regard whether it really falls under prog. It doesn't have to be all prog. There could be stuff in there that doesn't really do prog, but just as good music, just some good songs. I don't know about Coldplay, but I do like some Coldplay songs, but I wouldn't necessarily put that in my favorite or the best records of the 21st century, any of the records. But that's kind of where I'm at. But I guess it's just an update, and this is just a video blog that, I'd like to do more of. I'd like to do more concert stories. Maybe I'll stop and do a separate video now with a concert story I was thinking about. But thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.